The dim glow of the movie theater was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where families could escape into the world of make-believe. But for me, Jessica, it turned into a crucible of temptation. As the screen flickered with scenes of high-speed chases and explosions, my mind was elsewhere, caught in a web of unexpected emotions. Marcus, my son's friend, had just whispered something in the restroom that made my heart race. His confession, laden with forbidden desire, was a spark in the dark, igniting a flame I never anticipated. And now, as I returned to my seat, the question loomed. Could I keep this secret from unraveling the fabric of our family? I've always believed that life's most profound moments are often hidden in the mundane, wrapped in the simplicity of everyday routines. My name is Jessica, and at 47, I've come to cherish the quiet, unassuming times with my family. Robert, my husband of over 20 years, has been away on business trips more often lately, leaving me to navigate the complexities of our blended family. Ethan, Robert's son from a previous marriage, has grown into a fine young man of 22. Despite the intricacies of our family tree, Ethan and I share a bond that's as strong as any biological tie. Recently, Ethan introduced us to his friend Marcus, a charismatic young black man with dreams of becoming an engineer. Marcus has become a familiar face at our dinner table, his presence adding a vibrant energy to our home. His ambition and charm are infectious, and I've watched with a mother's pride as Ethan and Marcus's friendship has deepened. One Friday evening, with Robert away, I seized the opportunity to foster this bond further. "Let's go to the movies," I suggested, hoping to create a memory, a snapshot of family life, even if it was just for a few hours. Ethan, with his usual enthusiasm, chose an action thriller that had been on his radar for weeks. Marcus, ever the good sport, agreed with a grin that promised an evening of fun. The theater was alive with the buzz of excitement, the scent of popcorn mingling with the anticipation of the film. We settled into our seats, the darkness enveloping us, the screen a beacon of light and adventure. What could possibly go wrong in such a simple family outing? As the previews rolled, I felt a sense of peace. The movie was a blur of explosions and chase scenes, but I found my mind wandering, not fully engaged with the plot. Marcus, sitting next to me, was engrossed, his eyes wide with excitement. Ethan was on my other side, occasionally whispering comments about the film's inaccuracies. Halfway through, I excused myself to use the restroom, feeling the need for a brief escape from the noise and the darkness of the theater. As I walked down the dimly lit corridor, I felt a presence behind me. Turning slightly, I saw Marcus, his silhouette outlined by the flickering lights of the movie posters. He said he needed to use the restroom too, and we continued together, the silence between us filled with an unspoken tension. In the quiet of the restroom, the atmosphere shifted. Marcus, usually so confident, seemed hesitant, his eyes meeting, mine with a question in them. He leaned against the sink, his voice low. "Jessica, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." My heart skipped a beat, sensing the weight of his words. I could feel the air grow thick with anticipation. Marcus took a step closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. I've been feeling something for you. Something I shouldn't," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. The revelation hit me like a wave, unexpected and powerful. My mind raced, thoughts of Robert, of Ethan, of the delicate balance we had all been maintaining. "Marcus, this isn't right," I managed to say, my voice trembling. He nodded, understanding, yet the tension didn't dissipate. Instead, it morphed into something palpable, a forbidden attraction that neither of us had anticipated. As I returned to my seat, the theater was still shrouded in darkness, the screen casting flickering shadows across the faces of the audience. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of what had just transpired in the restroom. I felt like I was walking back into a different world, one where the lines between right and wrong had blurred. Ethan looked up as I sat down, his face illuminated by the glow of the movie. Everything okay, Jess? He asked, his voice filled with concern. I forced a smile, my lips trembling slightly. Yeah, just needed a break from all the action, I replied, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Marcus returned shortly after, his presence now a palpable force beside me. He didn't look at me, but I could feel his gaze, heavy with the weight of our unspoken secret. The rest of the movie passed in a blur, my mind replaying the kiss, the feel of his lips against mine, the rush of adrenaline that had surged through me. When the credits began to roll, Ethan stretched and yawned, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. "That was awesome, wasn't it?" he exclaimed, his enthusiasm undimmed by the complexities of adult emotions. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, it was quite something," I managed to say, my words hollow. We gathered our things, and as we walked out of the theater, Marcus lagged behind, allowing Ethan to lead the way. I could feel his eyes on me, a silent question hanging in the air. Once outside, the cool night air did little to clear my head. Ethan was already talking about the next movie he wanted to see, his voice a distant echo in my turmoil. Marcus caught up to us, his hand brushing mine, as if by accident sending a jolt through me. "Jessica," he started, his voice low so only I could hear. "I'm sorry if I cut him off, not wanting to delve into the conversation here, not with Ethan so close." "Let's not talk about it now," I whispered back, my voice firm yet shaky. Ethan turned around, sensing the shift in our conversation. Back in the theater, I sat down, my mind replaying the kiss over and over. Ethan was oblivious, still engrossed in the film, but Marcus's eyes met mine in the darkness, a silent acknowledgement of what had transpired. The movie ended, and we walked out, the cool night air doing little to calm my racing thoughts. In the car, the silence was palpable. Ethan chatted about the movie, but I could barely focus. Marcus was quiet, his gaze occasionally meeting mine in the rearview mirror. When we dropped him off, he gave me a look that was both apologetic and longing. The drive home was a blur. Ethan's voice seemed to come from a distance as he recounted his favorite parts of the film. My mind, however, was elsewhere, tangled in the web of emotions that Marcus's confession had spun. Once home, I went through the motions of our nightly routine, but my heart wasn't in it. I lay in bed, the room silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Robert's absence felt more pronounced than ever, his side of the bed cold and empty. I couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's lips on mine, the forbidden thrill of it all. It was wrong, so wrong, yet it had ignited something within me, a spark I hadn't felt in years. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread. How could I face Marcus again? How could I look at Ethan without him sensing the turmoil inside me? I busied myself with chores, trying to push the thoughts away, but they lingered like a persistent fog. When Ethan suggested we meet Marcus for lunch, my stomach churned. At the cafe, Marcus was already there, his smile warm but his eyes cautious. We exchanged pleasantries, but the air was thick with unspoken words. Ethan, ever the buffer, kept the conversation light, talking about his plans for the weekend, oblivious to the undercurrents between Marcus and me. Marcus and I barely spoke, our interactions limited to fleeting glances and half-smiles. Each look felt like a secret handshake, acknowledging the line we had crossed. As lunch ended, Marcus walked us to the car. The next day, Robert returned from his trip. I tried to act normal, but the guilt was eating at me. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Ethan casually mentioned how much fun he had at the movies and how Marcus had been acting a bit strange. My heart skipped a beat. Later, when Robert and I were alone, he asked me if everything was okay. The weight of my secret was too much. I confessed, not in detail, but enough for him to understand the gravity of what had happened. His face turned. From confusion to anger, then to a cold, hard disappointment. "You've betrayed our family," he said, his voice low and hurt. "I need time to think." I felt the room close in around me, the air thick with the tension of betrayal. Robert's eyes, once filled with love, now bore into me with a mix of pain and disbelief. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I whispered, my voice barely audible, my heart pounding in my chest. "It was just a moment, a fleeting moment of weakness." Robert stood up, his chair scraping against the floor, a sound that echoed like a gavel in a courtroom. He walked to the window, his back to me, his silhouette framed by the twilight. "How could you, Jessica?" His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a shout. "After all these years, after everything we've been through." Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. "I'm so sorry, Robert. I didn't plan for this. It just happened." He turned to face me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "And Marcus? What about him? Does he know what this could do to Ethan? To us?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of my actions. "He feels guilty too. We both know it was wrong." Robert sighed, a sound of resignation mixed with sorrow. "I need space, Jessica. I need to think about what this means for us, for our family." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched him leave the room, his steps heavy, each one a reminder of the gravity of my mistake. The days turned into weeks, and Robert's silence was deafening. He moved out, saying he needed space to process everything. Ethan was devastated, caught in the middle of a family he thought was unbreakable. Marcus, feeling responsible, kept his distance, his friendship with Ethan strained. I was left in a house that felt too big, too empty. I sought therapy, trying to understand my actions, my desires, and the consequences they brought. Robert eventually filed for divorce, unable to forgive the breach of trust. In the end, I learned that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are irreversible. My relationship with Ethan was strained, but not broken. He was hurt, but chose to forgive. Marcus moved away for a job, and we never spoke again. The lessons I learned from that moment of weakness were profound. I realized that the heart can be a treacherous guide, leading us into paths we never intended to walk. I had always prided myself on my integrity, on the strength of my family bonds. But in one fleeting moment, I compromised everything I held dear. I learned that the thrill of the forbidden can be intoxicating, but it's a poison that corrodes the very foundations of trust and love. The kiss with Marcus, though it felt like a spark, was a flame that burned down the life I had built with Robert. I also learned about forgiveness, not just from others, but from myself. Ethan's decision to forgive me, to still see me as part of his family, was a beacon of hope in my darkest times. It taught me that love, true love, can survive even the gravest of mistakes, though it might never be the same. Therapy helped me understand my own desires, my loneliness, and the void that Robert's frequent absences had left in my life. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. I learned to communicate better, to express my needs before they turned into actions I would regret. I learned to communicate better. And then there was the lesson of accountability. Marcus and I both knew what we did was wrong, yet we let it happen. I took responsibility for my part, understanding that while emotions can be overwhelming, they don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.